Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 U.S. Open Data Dive Show. We have a lot of great information to share with you all. We're going to take a look at the 2014 U.S. Open played at Pinehurst number 2 when Martin Kaymer won by 8 shots. Figure out the shot types and the metrics that we want to focus on this week at Pinehurst. We're going to take a look at historical U.S. Opens from a data perspective, figure out in general terms what plays well at U.S. Opens. Is it distance? Is it accuracy? Putting? All of that. And then, of course, we're going to cover the players in the field for the 2024 U.S. Open this week. So we have a lot to cover. And, of course, at the end, I am going to share with you all the background or the research that led to what I posted earlier today over on social media. So we have a lot to cover. Looking forward to it. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. There are a lot of great golf analytic tools out there. No doubt about that. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where, as I just alluded to, I posted some research earlier today around the past winners of the U.S. Open going back to 2012. There were 5 patterns that I saw that the previous winners have shared, and there are only 8 players that satisfy that same criteria coming into this week. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests that I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. Certainly fired off some wagers and some players at some numbers that I liked. And then as we move forward, we'll definitely be keying in more so on DFS, but definitely fired off some players at some numbers that I liked today. So if you want to see those pieces of information every week, give me a follow over at X as well. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation. He continues to update you throughout the week with his own version of course history, recent form, and all that. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday after calls, as he is gracious enough to host me over there. And we continue the DFS talk. We talk about game theory, our favorite areas, the price board, players that we don't mind eating the chalk on, players that we're fading, nervous to fade, but fading nonetheless. So it's always a great discussion over there. You don't want to miss out, and the only way you're going to be able to join us is if you are a subscriber to his article. So go show him some support as well. Follow him over on social media. Lastly, we're live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. Did you make any wagers today? Was Scotty the first name that you popped? At least when I looked, he was 3-1. What do you think is going to play well this week at Pinehurst number 2? Have you seen the forecast, which we'll cover here momentarily? So I would love to hear from you all in the community. Give me your winner, or at least early on in the week, who your winner is. What do you think plays well here, and all that. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2024 United States Open. And we start, as we traditionally do, on a Monday evening over at the extended forecast for Pinehurst. Good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Decent week. Was able to double up. Can't leave. Yeah, so I mentioned last night that my DFS was essentially a disaster with the exception of one lineup. I top 50'd a 3-entry max contest, which accrued back quite a bit of what I put in. It was still a losing proposition, or a losing week in total for me, because I had so much Cantlay. Adam Schenk was my 6K play. Victor Hovland, top 15, but, wasn't really a factor come Sunday. I didn't have much of Morikawa, who I knew was a bold fade. So my one lineup that top 50'd had Fitzpatrick, who had a very exceptional Sunday and really catapulted up. It was the one, or maybe I had two lineups with Fitzpatrick. Morikawa might have been on that lineup. It was my one lineup of Morikawa. So I got lucky. That's what it takes. I had one very good lineup that saved what essentially was a disaster for DFS. Like I mentioned, I had a whole lot of Cantley, had a whole lot of Adam Schenk. I used quite a bit of Wyndham Clark, who I thought was going to be pretty good and was very unique, and he didn't turn out well. The two really suggestions that I think I'm most proud of last week, being so high on Sung Jae, and he was just solid throughout the week, despite the fact that he triple bogeyed the opening hole. He played very solid, and then I was very, very high on Seabez, and he had the tournament that he did. So, congrats to you on a very successful week, sounding like over on Yahoo. And we are going to try to keep your momentum. I'm going to try and build it back up. As I was joking last night that if we're going to follow the pattern, the PGA was a pretty good success for me. Then the next week, the Charles Schwab was a disaster. The RBC Canadian was fine. Then last week, the Memorial wasn't all that great. So by pattern-wise, this should be pretty good. Should be pretty good this week. So let's, as you said, let's find the optimal plays and whatnot. Thanks for jumping in chat. Appreciate the support you've shown to the channel for a long, long time. Let's take a look at the forecast, at least the extended forecast for Pinehurst. And of course, we'll zoom in on this come Wednesday night. But as of right now, it doesn't look like a whole lot of weather in the forecast. No rain. So I've read a couple of player reviews. I think probably Wyndham Clark's is probably the one that's getting the most traction, saying that the greens are already borderline in terms of playable. So you know it's going to be firm. You know it's going to be fast. Probably lightning. Doesn't look like there's any rain in the forecast to slow this down. So the USGA is going to have this exactly how they want it, which is very firm. All the run out and all that. Thursday, maybe a slight bit of wind late in the day. Friday looks immaculate, hot, high of 93, but very little wind. Maybe Saturday and Sunday looks like it could pick up some wind, but again, this is so far out, being 2.5 days essentially since to the start of the tournament. It doesn't appear like wind is going to be a big factor, at least early on in the forecast. So with that, because we are not going to have any wind or look at any wind metrics, we're going to start with something that, quite honestly, I just completely skipped out on last night. Not by purpose. I was just excited to cover so many things that it just kind of slipped my mind. Let's take a look at Don Ross. Don Ross Designs. This is Don Ross's shining jewel, the course that he's probably most famously known for. And I mentioned last night that Don Ross does have a few designs on the PGA Tour. The one that always comes to my mind the quickest is Sedgefield, host of the Wyndham, which is the customary final regular season event on the PGA Tour. But he has his hands on a few places. Detroit, host of the Rocket Mortgage, and Eastlake, which is the host of the Tour Championship. So he's got his hands on a few courses on the PGA Tour. So if we look at Don Ross Designs in the past 2 years, Don Ross Architect filter checked last 2 years. Won't be 36 rounds, obviously. Sung Jae's going to have the most since he is customarily at Eastlake. And anybody who plays Detroit or Sedgefield. So not a whole lot of rounds here, but Don Ross is certainly an icon in terms of golf architecture and his greens. At least the contouring of the greens generally all share the same feature of that dome shape or that turtle back, if you will. So on Don Ross Designs, in the past 2 years, our top performers are Stephan Jaeger, Russell Henley, Cam Davis, Xander, Lucas Glover, Tom Kim, Colin Morikawa, Wyndham Clark, Ben An, and Sung Jae. Interesting to note, Cam Davis, his win at the Rocket Mortgage a couple of years ago, you see in 2022, played extremely well. Maybe it was 2021, but either way, I mean, he played extremely well. He has played extremely well at the Rocket Mortgage. He played well at the Wyndham last year. Tom Kim, his win at the Wyndham. Let's see. Ben An, Sung Jae generally plays Don Ross Designs well. Of course, he's generally pretty good at East Lake last year, notwithstanding, but played well at the Wyndham. He's played well at the Rocket Mortgage in the past. So there's a look at your top Don Ross performers. And I wanted to make sure I led off the show this evening with that, considering I completely neglected it. It just completely slipped my mind last night, even though I spent a little bit of time talking about Don Ross in the GCSA tournament fact sheet. We never looked at Don Ross from a data standpoint in Fantasy National, so I wanted to make sure I led off the show with that. If you want to continue on down a little bit, maybe to the top 15 or top 20, Taylor Pendrith, Victor Hovland, Højgaard, Taylor Moore, JT Poston. Those are your top 15 in terms of total performance the past 2 years on Don Ross Designs. The other end of the spectrum, players who have not played Don Ross Designs very well. And again, this is quite a small sample size, missed cuts and whatnot, so you might not want to put the entire emphasis into this, but it's good information, as Don Ross definitely has a design style, if you will. Your worst performers have been Mackenzie Hughes, Emiliano Grillo, Zach Blair, Jim Herman, Nick Taylor. Sahith Theegala in 8 rounds has not played particularly well on Don Ross Designs. A lot of that coming at the Tour Championship last year. But even the Rocket Mortgage, he was really bad over the weekend in 2022. I might have said Tour Championship last year, meant Tour Championship 2022, but as you see there, he hadn't played Don Ross Designs very well. Austin Eckroat, Beau Hossler, S.H. Kim, Akshay Bhatia, Shane Lowry, McCarthy, Harry Higgs, Gordon Sargent. Again, only 2 rounds, so don't get carried away with this. But at least in very small samples, these players have not played well on Don Ross Designs. Something that we absolutely know about the U.S. Open in general is that it's difficult. It's going to be difficult. It's the way the USGA wants it. It is a major for a reason. So, in rounds that are difficult relative to par, your top performers the past 2 years have been Scotty, Rory, Xander, Wyndham Clark, Cam Smith, Tommy Fleetwood, Tyrrell Hatton, Russell Henley, Ludwig Aubert, and Matt Fitzpatrick. You want to continue on down a little bit to the top 15 or so, Jon Rahm, Hovland, Cantlay, Morikawa, Seabez, so on down there. There's your top 15 to 20 maybe in terms of performance when rounds are difficult relative to par. The other end of the spectrum, players who have not played well when it's been difficult. Nico Echeverria, Harry Higgs. Again, Tiger Woods only 6 rounds, so quite a very small sample size, and with all his injuries. Sung Kang, Ben Coles, Francesco Molinari, Adam Svensson has not played particularly well the past couple of years when it's been difficult. You see he's been, just slightly over field average. He much prefers when rounds are easy, as you can see there. So he's not played terribly well when it's difficult. Eric Van Rooyen, much the same, has not played all that well when it's been difficult, at least in the past 2 years. This is his career baseline. Nick Taylor, Zach Blair, Justin Thomas, Eric Cole, so on. Those are your players who have not played well when rounds have been difficult relative to par. And just like the Memorial, that's probably where I'm leaning most in terms of any filters that I'll be using. And then we know Pinehurst number 2 is absolutely very long. Over 7,500 yards as a par 70 by par. This is this is the longest course players will see on tour this season. So your top performers on courses that are long: Scotty, Xander, Rory, Max Homa, Sungjae, Akshay Bhatia, Wyndham Clark, John Rahm, Sahith Tagala, and Ben On. And then further on down, you can see Hovland, Hatton, DeChambeau, Morikawa, J-Day, top 15 there, and so on. The other end of the spectrum, Moronk has not played well on long courses. Tiger, Zach Blair, Adam Svensson, Eric Cole, Jake Knapp, DJ, Cam Davis, Matthew Pavone, Nick Taylor, Griot, Herman, Seamus Power, Dunlap, Molinari, Poston. So there's a look at your kind of overarching or big picture view. Gosh dang it. Big picture view filters. The Don Ross filter, the long course filter, the difficult relative to par filter. Definitely want to take a look at those this week. I'm trying to get this cleared out for the last two. There we go. Fantasy National was struggling there for a second. Okay, we took a look at the course breakdown last night. If there's any questions, I can bring that up momentarily, or we can take a quick look at it. But really, let's just kind of take a look at, let's start with U.S. Opens in general. So we'll move to Microsoft Excel just for a little bit. I showed you this a little bit last night. We have the strokes gained data from LACC. We did not get it from Brookline, Mass. at the Country Club. In 2022, we do have 2021, 20, and 19. Nothing before that. So the strokes gained data might be a little bit of a small sample size issue. It is what it is because the USGA has proprietary on those stats, much like the Masters. Having said that, everything else you can see we have. Par 3, par 4, par 5, proximity, all that. So let's get a general sense of how U.S. Opens generally play. So you can see in the few years that we have strokes gained data for, a whole lot of approach, whole lot of approach, and quite a bit of putting actually. Around the green going to be a pretty decent factor, and off the tee is the lowest. Really kind of getting hurt by Torrey in 2021 with only a 0.7 for the top performers. So I would probably tend to agree with that, especially applying it to Pinehurst, because we don't clearly have the strokes gained data. Whoa, what did I just do there? We don't have the strokes gained data for Pinehurst back in 2014. We don't have that. We got everything else, just not the strokes gained. So with the greens being very, very difficult to hit, they're going to play much smaller than their actual square footage. I mentioned last night how I think putting is going to be a big deal, not just while you're on the green, but I can see lag putting being a big deal, even though it's probably going to be a factor around the, be counted as around the green. I imagine most players will probably putt around the green, since this is all closely mown area, there's no rough on Pinehurst number 2. So I can see like lag putting, 3-putt avoidance being a pretty big deal. So I'm going to have pretty good amount of my mixed condition model come into these 3 shot types this week. Not to say that I think off the tee is completely mitigated, but these fairways are generally pretty good to hit, and players know that the U.S. Open, if you're not in the fairway, regardless of the course, whether that's Pinehurst or somewhere else, you're just in deep trouble, whether that's rough or sandy native areas like this year. So most players, I imagine, are going to be very much less aggressive off the tee than what they otherwise might be. So I think it's pretty clear that the 4th of the 4 strokes gained major shot types will be off the tee. So we're going to be focused on these 3. We'll take a little bit of a look on off the tee, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to want to focus on one aspect of off the tee, I think. So we'll go back to Fantasy National here very, very quickly. Your top off the tee players when rounds are difficult relative to par. Let's make sure we're in the last 2 years here. Your top off the tee players when rounds are difficult relative to par: Scotty, Rory, Patrick Cantlay, Victor Hovland, Siwoo Kim, Jordan Spieth, Xander, Bryson, Tyrrell Hatton, Wyndham Clark, and Adam Scott are your top 10 off the tee performers when rounds are difficult relative to par. Because I have this filter selected, and we know that there is no rough around Pinehurst number 2, I really liked what I got back in terms of strokes around the green using this difficult relative to par. So your top around the green performers when rounds are difficult relative to par: Scotty, Tommy Fleetwood, Hideki, Brendan Todd, Alex Noren, Matt Fitzpatrick, Brooks Koepka, Stefan Jaeger, Rory, and Beau Hossler. Now, I do think the around the green will be a little bit more mitigated than what the data just suggested in Excel, due to the fact that I think players will putt more often than chip with these tight lies and the speed of the greens. I do want to show you the around the green because there are some bunkers and whatnot around Pinehurst, or a lot of bunkers, but specifically when we're talking about players missing the green and not in the bunker, they're going to be in some tight fairway lie situations. And I imagine a lot of players will putt. But the most important shot type, I think, as per usual, most tournaments, especially at the USGA, especially the majors, is going to be approach. So in the last 3 months or 24 rounds, our top strokes gained approach players have been Scotty, Corey Connors, Rory, Xander, Tony Finau, Siwoo Kim, Victor Hovland, Aaron Rai, Justin Thomas, and Sepp Straka. Interesting to see. I mean, Justin Thomas doesn't have the top-end finishes that you would think. I mean, yes, he was top 10 at the PGA at Valhalla, did top 5 RBC Heritage, but, you know, there's been a lot to be made that he has kind of struggled lately. His irons have been fantastic lately. It's his putter that is holding him back. So if he ever putts well, look out. He's in his career, he's been just the slightest of slight above field average on Bermuda. So there's your top approach players, and of course we don't want to ignore the putting. So on Bermuda greens, now last night I looked at Fast and Lightning because I could not confirm that they were going to be just Lightning. I think it's safe to say, with a couple of the player interviews and player feedback that we've gotten so far, let's go ahead and just take a look at Lightning Bermuda greens. Pretty comfortable thinking that the USGA wants it this way. Sounds like the course is already set up that way. So on lightning speed Bermuda greens, your top putters have been Xander, Matt Fitzpatrick, Sam Burns, Thomas Dietrich, Brian Harman, Minwoo Lee, Tommy Fleetwood, Terrell Hatton, Sahith Theegala, and Seabez. While we have these two filters selected, I'm going to go ahead and go to the putting page view in Fantasy National. I want to look at two more things here in addition to just putting or just total putting. Let's take a look at 3-putt avoidance. Lag putting is going to be a big deal this week, at least in my opinion. So, on lightning speed Bermuda greens, your top 3-putt avoiders: Xander, Matt Fitzpatrick, Seabez, Siwoo Kim, J-Day, Minwoo Lee, Chris Kirk, Eric Cole, Brian Harman, and Thomas Dietrich. You'll notice that most of these players are excellent putters in general on lightning bent greens, like Xander, number 1 putter, number 1 3-putt avoider. Fitzpatrick, second in total putting. The real outliers here are Siwoo and Chris Kirk. Siwoo and Chris Kirk are rated horribly in terms of total putting, but for 3-putt avoidance, they're both pretty good. They're both really good 3-putt avoiders. So take that however you wish, whether you want to value the total putting more or the 3-putt avoidance, because I think they're both going to be pretty darn important this week. Last thing I want to look at on this page view, let's take a look at 25 feet. This is, all kind of tied together: 3-putt avoidance, long distance putting, lag putting, total putting. I'm more leaning towards 3-putt avoidance right now, but I think it's appropriate to look at some distance putting. This is the U.S. Open. I don't think many players are going to be sticking it to 10 feet. So your top putters on lightning Bermuda greens from 25 feet plus: Corey Connors, Cam Davis, Tom Kim, Ludwig Aubert, Adam Svensson, Matthew Pavone, Tom Hoge, Nick Dunlap, Minwoo Lee, Stefan Jaeger. Best example I can show you, like Corey Connors, just not a very good putter generally, and especially you can see here 129th in terms of total putting on lightning Bermuda greens, but he is the number 1 distance putter, 25 feet plus. So quite the dichotomy there. Some players are just solid. Cameron Davis is just pretty darn solid, 3-putt avoidance, total, and distance. Minwoo Lee, look at all these, except for 20 to 25 feet. He's solid everywhere. Sam Burns, solid, which you probably should expect, Bermuda Burns. But there's a look at your top distance putters, 25 feet beyond putters on lightning Bermuda greens. So I definitely wanted to put a decent amount of emphasis into putting, because it will have a decent amount of emphasis in the mixed condition model come Wednesday night. We'll get this prepped for fairways and greens. We'll move back to Fantasy National. We move to fairways, greens, distance, and notice that with the exception of a couple of years, mainly Pebble, which doesn't emphasize distance at all, and Shinnecock in 2018, most U.S. Opens reward a decent amount of distance. You see Pinehurst here at a 9.25. That would still be slightly above full field course average on the PGA Tour. Now, recent U.S. Opens, you look at, Torrey Pines, Winged Foot, LACC really emphasizes the distance. So I think the distance is going to be the emphasis over the accuracy if I were to choose one. I just don't know if I'm going to, because I do think off the tee is the least of the 4 major shot types. Instead, it's really good drives gained and greens from these prior U.S. Opens. This good drives gained number is rather large. 2.76 would be one of the highest, if not the highest, on the PGA Tour. I believe PGA Championships greens are close to a 4. This is darn close to it. We look at Pinehurst in 2014. It was under a 2 for good drives gained, but you see the greens was a 4.3. So again, I would think we're going to be wanting to look at greens gained when rounds are difficult relative to par. So there's a look at your historical U.S. Opens in that regard. We move to scoring. I'm just going to complete Microsoft Excel. That way we don't have to flip back and forth between Excel and Fantasy National. We look at scoring. This is a U.S. Open. Pars are generally good scores, so you would think bogey avoidance is it. Yep, you can see that almost by a full shot. More important in terms of bogey avoidance versus birdies gained. And when we go down to 2014 and Pinehurst number 2, yeah, almost a full shot there as well. 3.2 and a 2.33. Not to say we're going to overlook the birdies gained. We'll take a look at it. But the definite emphasis would be on bogey avoidance this week. It is a U.S. Open after all. And then not sure how much looking at the historical data will matter for this, but generally speaking, par 3s play a decent factor. It all kind of depends on the course layout as to where the importance of the par 3s come in. But we're probably going to be looking at total par 3s. You see a 1.71 there. Now in 2014, it was all in the 200 to 225. Interesting. They didn't have any single par 3 play over 225, which there is one on the scorecard that measures 240 now. So I don't know if we want to feel, or if I don't know if we're going to feel comfortable enough to just separate out this range. But you can see the par 3s of 1.71 versus the par 5s, which are a 1.47. So the par 3s historically at U.S. Opens matter more. And I would expect that to be the case this year because we only have 2 par 5s at Pinehurst. And in fact, if we look at Pinehurst in 2014, 1.62 versus the par 5s at a 1.58 or 1.48. So, yeah, that shows that the par 3s were slightly more important. But again, look at this massive, I mean, just huge number in the par 4s, just like the PGA Championship. Par 4s are where it's going to be at, and we have 2 extra ones here. Since this is a par 70, we're going to put a lot of emphasis in the par 4s. I don't know if we're going to be confident enough to separate out any particular range, but generally speaking, it is the longer par 4s that matter. As you can see here, Pinehurst, that was the case as well. But really, I mean, a lot in par 4s. And then par 5s, we only have 1 in here and 1 here. 2014, it looked like the shorter was the more important. Okay, we'll just look at a par 5s probably. And then proximity, hard to say because we didn't get any proximity data in 2014. But as you would probably expect, the longer irons are where it's at least historically, for a U.S. Open. So there's a look at some really, really detailed data around prior U.S. Opens up here, and then a little bit further down, we took a look at the 2014 raw data. We might look at the prior leaderboard as well, but wanted to give you all this information for your use throughout this week. So let's go ahead and jump back to Fantasy National. We'll take a look at the prior leaderboard just very, very quickly. The reason why we skipped the strokes gained, obviously you saw it in Excel. We didn't get any strokes gained data there. So fairways and greens, as I was mentioning, probably the distance more so than the fairways, because you see quite a few players in the top 16 here were negative in terms of fairways, but the majority of your top 10 were positive in distance. Okay, I think it's a small thing, but look at the greens. Not a single player negative in your top 16 in greens gained. So just a big factor. Big factor. We'll get that prep, gosh dang it, for scoring. We'll take a look at a couple of different things here. 36 rounds. Let's go difficult. And last 2 years. I will take a look at the distance. This will probably be like a tiebreaker for me if I'm debating between players in lineups or at certain price points. So your top driving distance players when rounds are difficult relative to par: Rory, Cam Young, Bryson, Wyndham Clark, Minwoo Lee, Ben On, Adam Scott, Gary Woodland, Ludwig Aubert, and Jon Rahm. But clearly the biggest thing in this page view is going to be greens. It's going to have a significant amount of weight come Wednesday night on the mixed condition model, or in the mixed condition model. So your top greens gained players when rounds are difficult relative to par: Scotty, Xander, Jon Rahm, Sepp Straka, Colin Morikawa, Cameron Young, Victor Hovland, Wyndham Clark, Aaron Rai, and Rory. There are quite a few bunkers around Pinehurst, so we'll take a look at sand saves as well. I'm just going to keep the difficult relative to par filter on. So your top sand saves players: rounds difficult relative to par: Brendan Todd, Seabass, Hideki, Adam Schenk, Lucas Glover, Fitzpatrick, Russell Henley, Ben On, S.H. Kim, and Billy Horschel. Not sure if I'm going to do anything with sand saves. I'll probably do around the green just in a general sense, but always interesting to look at. We'll take a look at scoring. There. Yeah, I mean, even back in 2014, you see just the sheer volume of players that were positive in bogey avoidance. If we sort first, fourth, second, 12th, top 10, my goodness, just whole lot of unique correlation. Whereas while our winner did lead in birdies gained, sure, right after that's a 45th, 17th. You have a missed cut up here, pretty high. It's about the bogey avoidance. This is a U.S. Open. It's about the bogey avoidance. So your top bogey avoiders when rounds are difficult relative to par: Scotty, Tommy Fleetwood, Rory, J-Day, Matt Fitzpatrick, Hideki, Xander, Tyrrell Hatton, Max Homa, Siwoo Kim. We'll go ahead and take a quick look at the birdies gained, because they might have 5% in the mixed condition model come Wednesday night, but the bogey avoidance is going to have a very big amount. So your top birdies gained when it's difficult: Scotty, Wyndham, Rory, Tyrrell Hatton, Ryan Fox, Nick Dunlap, Keegan, Tom Kim, Sepp Straka, Victor Hovland. Probably going to skip proximity. It's hard to say. Maybe total procs. Maybe your longer. So let's just take a look here. If we sort on total procs, like Victor would be somebody to probably think about. You're going to want to focus on mostly these two longest ranges, maybe the 150 to 175 as well. So players that are good at all four of these columns. So Victor, Scotty, Lucas Glover. Finau's a little bit middling. He's good with total procs, but kind of more good. at the longest ranges. He really excels, as you see, the shorter proximities. Gary Woodland, somebody to think about if you're going to go with long proximity, long iron proximity. John Rahm. Maybe Obear. He falls off in the 150 to 175, but at the very long 200 plus and 175 to 200, he's great. Justin Rose, Akshay Bhatia, definitely somebody to consider if you want to factor in long iron proximity. But we'll move to par threes, and if we look at 2014, just very quickly, you see Keimer played them extremely well. Generally speaking, they were played pretty well from your top 16. You have a couple of exceptions here, like Ricky didn't play them terribly well, but like Henrik Stenson was amazing at them, Keegan, Brooks, so definitely going to be a decent little factor. Your top par 3 performers, let me reset these filters here. Your top par 3 performers in the last 3 months. Top par 3 performers: Ludwig Obear, Bhatia, Henley, Fitzpatrick, Ben On, Morikawa, Hideki, Corey Connors, Sahith Theegala, Scotty, and Bryson. Now, do be aware, you probably want to focus on the 3 longest ranges here. So, Obear, Bhatia, like Henley is very good, 175 to 225, but the 225 plus, he is really bad. So be aware of that. Fitzpatrick is bad at the very long par 3s. Ben On, solid. Brian Harman, solid at the 3 longest ranges. So just be aware of that. Moving to par 4s. And, I mean, you'll see just how much this played a factor for Martin Keimer, Ricky. I mean, this is where these two really made their hay at Pinehurst number 2 in 2014. I mean, just huge amounts of just amazing correlation here. My guesses would be the 450 to 500 would be my guess in terms of the range we would want to focus on if we want to separate one out. Keimer led in that range, top 10, top 15, top 20. I'm just not confident we want to do that by itself. We're definitely going to have par 4s, maybe 5% in the 450 to 5, but there's 3 of them that measure 500 plus. We've got 3 that measure under 400 yards. So I'm not terribly confident. I think it's just all par 4s in general. So your top par 4 performers in the last 3 months: Scotty, Colin Morikawa, Rory, Sepp Straka, Xander, Tommy Fleetwood, Noren, Obear, DeChambeau, and Seabez. And then lastly, par 5s, just very, very quickly. Like, you still got to play them well. I just think the par 3s are going to be a little bit more since we only have 2 par 5s. That would be my guess. But still gonna be a decent little factor. So your top par 5 performers the past 3 months: Billy Horschel, Xander, Scotty, Nick Dunlap, Patrick Cantlay, Victor Paris, Mackenzie Hughes, Austin Eckroat, Rico Hoey, Colin Morikawa. All right. With that, let's go ahead and go to Microsoft Excel again. We'll bring up the players in the field this week and their historical performance at U.S. Opens. Again, normally this would be at the course, but because this is the U.S. Open and venues change, this is their performance across all U.S. Opens going back to 2012. So our top approach players in U.S. Opens going back to 2012: Tom Kim, only twice, but he has played very well in his 2 U.S. Opens. You see Colin Morikawa, Rikuya Hoshino, who's missed the cut twice, but he has actually been really good with the irons. It's the around the green and the off the tee that has held him back. So maybe an interesting flyer if you're playing multiple lineups. Maybe worth a flyer since he has generally hit his irons pretty well in U.S. Opens. Hideki, Victor, EVR. Not much to show in terms of finishes, but he's hit his irons fairly well. Of course, Jon Rahm, Will Zalatoris, Henley, Eric Cole, all in the irons, all in the putting. Generally a good combination. You got to be on top of all of every facet of your game if you're going to succeed at the U.S. Open. He's been really bad around the green and off the tee, and that's why he has had some very, very poor finishes. See Xander, DeChambeau, Austin Eckroat, only 1 for 2. Sungjae, only 3 for 5, but has hit his irons fairly well. So there's a look at your top approach players in U.S. Opens. We'll definitely look at around the green. Definitely want to see that. So your top around the green performers. Seabez leading the way. Notice 2 for 2. But it's only 1 time. Victor Hovland has actually been very good around the green at U.S. Opens. Harris English, look at this. 8 for 8. Making the cut at U.S. Opens. 8 for 8. So keep that in mind. Eckroat, Douglas Thompson, Taylor Pendrith, only 1 for 3. Been on, only 3 for 6, but has been solid. Really statistically at U.S. Opens, it's just putter that's let him down. Minwoo Lee, very solid. Sepp Straka, only 1 for 3. But has been pretty solid. He's generally a good putter. There's JT, he's been good around the green. Xander, of course. Molinari, Jon Rahm, Matt Fitzpatrick, Rory. So there's your top around the green performers. We're going to skip putting just because surfaces, like courses and surfaces are different and all that. So we're just going to focus on Bermuda and rely on Fantasy National for that. So instead, let's look at greens. Greens are going to be such a massive, massive factor this week at Pinehurst number 2. So your top greens gained players historically at U.S. Opens. I say historically back to 2012. Victor, Minwoo Lee, Brooks, Tom Kim, Sungjae. Again, less in terms of performance, but hit plenty of greens. Morikawa, Rory, Xander, DJ, Wyndham Clark, only 1 for 3, but is the defending champion. Woodland, Hideki, Ricky, Jon Rahm. There's Lowry, 7 for 10. And making the cut, Daniel Berger, 6 for 8. Again, I don't know how unique he'll be, but I generally have tried to stay away from him, considering he's trying to work his way back from injury. But I think he played pretty well here in 2014 as a rookie. So someone to maybe think about. There's Henley, Rose, Mickelson, Molinari. Bogey avoidance. Definitely want to focus on bogey avoidance. So your top bogey avoiders historically at U.S. Opens. Look at that. Minwoo Lee, he's popped on several of these. Granted, he's played 2 U.S. Opens very, very well, but he is popping quite a bit on these metrics. Hideki, 10 for 11. DJ. Scotty's only 4 for 6, but 3 top 10s in his past 3 U.S. Opens, not to mention the heater he's on. Tom Kim played pretty well. Rory, Wyndham, Ricky Fowler, Brooks, Xander, Morikawa, Harman. McCarthy been avoiding bogeys and double bogeys pretty well. My guess is he's negative in birdies. Not the best. Surprising to see him. He is 3 for 4. He's 3 for 4. Let's give him a little bit more credit than I was about to. He's actually played pretty well in U.S. Opens. Bryson, Bobby Mack, who I think's in the field, although I haven't confirmed it, but I thought he's in the field. Webb, Jon Rahm, Kuchar, Zalatoris. So there's your top bogey avoiders at U.S. Opens. We're going to finish this portion off with par fours, and then I'll show you the research to end the show. So your top par four performers at U.S. Opens. Look, 7 for 7, average finish of 7th. Look what he's doing. He's taking advantage of the par fours, or he's playing them well. Minwoo Lee, Hideki, 10 for 11. Victor, Morikawa, Tom Kim, 2 for 2. DJ, Brooks, Rory, all of these guys, Scottie Scheffler, what are they doing? They are playing the par fours extremely well. That's why it's going to have maybe the most weight come Wednesday night in the mixed condition model. If not the most, it'll be second. I mean, you just have to play the par fours extremely well. And it looks like, for the most part, they're playing the 450 to 500s well, which would be the range. These two, 450 to 5 and 500 plus. But really, look at all the emphasis in the par fours. All right, so let me bring this back to average finish and sort for you all. We're going to end the show off with what led me to post what I did on social media in terms of research. Like I said, there were 5 criteria that I posted that all of these winners seem to share. So I'll zoom in for you all. First thing I want to bring to your all's attention, let's take a look at their recent performance leading into the U.S. Open. So we're talking about, I'm going to go back to the Masters. So that range there, you see Wyndham Clark had won the Wells Fargo, played pretty well at the Memorial, but he had a top 10. Fitzpatrick had 3 top 10s since the Masters. Jon Rahm had 2 top 10s since the Masters. That was one of the first things that jumped out to me. 2020, again, I excluded because it's 2020, but even Bryson had a top 5 at the PGA that summer. Gary Woodland, top 10 the PGA. Top 10 at the Charles Schwab for Brooks. Top 10 at the Valero. All of these players, every single one of them, except for, I think, even Webb had a top 10 since the Masters. So all 11, again, I'm excluding 2020 for 2020 reasons. All 11 of the U.S. Open champions, going back to 2012, had a top 10 since the Masters. So very recent form is a big thing, is a big deal. Okay? Let's take a look at their prior tournament, like the event they played prior to the U.S. Open. Again, skipping 2020 for 2020 reasons. Wyndham Clark, top 15. Fitzpatrick, top 10. Who was 2021? Is that Bryson? No, Jon Rahm. Top 10. All the way back to 2012, who I believe is Webb. Every single one of these champions, except for 2012, they at least made the cut. Their previous event played. Now, Gary Woodland wasn't all that great in 2019 before he won. I think that's Gary Woodland, yeah. 2018, like Brooks, 30th and the 37th. So, wasn't great, but they at least made the cut. But most recently, these guys have been playing very well leading into it. So that was another one of the criteria, was that players at least made the cut their previous tournament played. All right. Let's take a look at some important statistical things. I didn't really highlight this because it was only 10 of 11, or 9 of 11 since I'm skipping 2020. But off the tee, players have been generally pretty good. Look at this. The last 8 champions, again excluding 2020, last 8 champions gained strokes putting their previous event leading into the U.S. Open. They gained in distance. They gained in greens. So that's a lot of other things to think about too. Gaining distance, putting. The last thing I'll show you in terms of what led to this research, let's see how they performed in U.S. Opens leading up to their win. So this is the winner matrix. Wyndham Clark is an outlier. Look, he had 2 missed cuts and then wins. But look at every other champion of the U.S. Open. They at least made the cut. Most of them played fairly well. You know, Fitzpatrick wasn't great. Bryson and Gary Woodland were middling. Martin Keimer wasn't great before winning. But every single U.S. Open champion before Wyndham Clark last year made the cut at the previous year's U.S. Open. So that was another one of the criteria. Even though Wyndham Clark broke that pattern, until it happens twice or twice in a row even, I'm still going to consider that part of the pattern. So from this, what you've got are the 5 criteria of they made the cut at last year's U.S. Open. They made the cut their previous event played. So think about the players that just played the Memorial, like Cantley, Wyndham Clark. They missed the cut. They're out. Adam Schenk. All those players that just missed the cut. Not factoring them in terms of a win, since they don't fit the pattern. They had to have gained putting. That knocked out quite a few players from consideration. They've had a top 10 since the Masters, or considered maybe the past couple of months. You see that here. Wyndham Clark, top 10s there, top 10s, top 10, top 10, top 10. So they had at least one top 10 in the past couple of months. So all of these things I put over on X. So if you're interested in seeing the 5 criteria and the players in the field this week who fit that criteria, go check that out over on social media. There are only 8 players, 8 of them, in the field this week that fit all 5 criteria that I just went over for you all. Well, that's going to be the show for this evening. Thanks to Darnell for jumping in chat. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I love what I do, taking an in-depth look at sports statistics, trying to find patterns and doing a lot of the research around that, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Some weeks it works, some weeks it doesn't. If we're going to follow the pattern, this week should be pretty good, knock on wood. But thanks for all the support. Love what I do. And go show Gabe some support. His handle is in the description. If you aren't subscribed to his article, you really are missing out. And if you are subscribed to his article, make sure to join us Wednesday nights over in his Substack chat. We continue our DFS discussion over there. We talk about what kind of lineups we're building, our favorite players in the areas of the price board and whatnot. So make sure you are following him over on social media and subscribe to that article. Thanks again for all the wagers you have made so far this week for the U.S. Open, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the U.S. Open. And until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics Show, may all your bets be profitable.